When last we left off, I was just about to share my next tip for how to install recessed lighting, and that is use multicolored straws to mark the location of your pilot hole, because they will be much easier for you to find once you get up into the attic or the ceiling above to do your work. Now we're going to go ahead and drill out for all 13 of our holes. If you've got a delicate ceiling, you may want to consider using some painter's tape to mark the area where your hole saw will be placed to help minimize the likelihood of tearing once you begin to make your cuts. A higher end painter's tape is going to be recommended because it's less likely to leave any type of adhesive. And we have jumped forward quite a bit, and now we are in the process of finalizing our installation of our lights. And so we've got our lights hanging down. One of the main reasons for leaving them down in the space like this is so that we can make sure that all these fixtures are working before we seat them in their final location. So you can see kind of looks like some type of science project or jellyfish hanging down in the space right here, but we're gonna get everything tightened up here. And it's gonna look just marvelous. This job is coming on really, really good. All right, folks, I'm back. I've got all of the preliminary wiring done. As you can see, I've got everything hanging down through the ceiling. I personally prefer to do as much wiring as humanly possible on the regular air-conditioned level of a property if possible. Anything to stay out of an attic to avoid all the heat and the insulation and whatever else may be up there. So I've taken this as far as I can take it from this level. Now I'm just going to seat all of the lights in all of their final positions, and then I'll go upstairs into the attic and complete all the wiring, tighten everything down, as well as position and secure all the boxes to the framing in the attic. So I'm gonna position these lights, and then I'll come back, and then we'll move on to the next phase. I have been wearing these gloves for a while, so I am gonna take these off and discard them and put on a new pair. That actually is the main reason why I did not put each one of these fixtures up into the ceiling one at a time as I did the wiring, because it's much less likely for me to get dust or transfer from the light fixture onto the ceiling, or from my hands onto the ceiling and fixture, if I just start off with a brand new pair of gloves and then just put all the fixtures into the ceiling at one time. Way less chances I'm going to get dust around the openings and from fingerprints and things like that. So stay tuned. All right, let's go ahead and get these fixtures seated in here. We've got 13 of them. Now, as you notice, some of the wiring on these is longer than others. We can easily go back and trim these wires down to a shorter length once we get up there into attic to be able to do our final steps. But this is just to get everything going and be able to check everything for issues before we go ahead and do our final installation. And I know it sounds like I'm avoiding the attic, because I am. You've not lived until you've had to crawl around in an attic for hours and try to work by flashlight. And so that's the main reason why we're trying to do all of our due diligence before we get up in there, because it'd be a shame to have a fixture that was defective or didn't work, or have some type of issue in the line where we couldn't make all these fixtures work. And we didn't find that out until we actually had everything completely installed, and then had to go back and start taking lights out of the ceiling and doing things like that. We have to touch areas more than the times we could have done if we had just taken a different order of operation. So that was the main reason for doing that. All right, folks, so all of the fixtures are now in. All I need to do is go up into the attic and secure everything. And the next thing that I'm gonna do is to change out my dimmer switch, because there's a dimmer switch that's in here, but there's no guarantee that it's going to be compatible with these type of lights, and plus it's got some age on it. It's got some discoloration and fading done to it and some yellowing. So we want to get a brand new one in there to make everything look nice and neat. So as soon as we get done with that, we're going to test this thing out. We're going to compare what this place looks like before, when I showed you when we still had that ceiling fixture here in the middle of the chandelier, compared to what we're going to have now. So stay tuned. FYI, the old dimmer switch did work with these LED lights. However, we already had a switch that was specifically designed to work with this type of LED setup, and so we went ahead and installed what we'd initially planned to go with. Okay, so before I install this dimmer switch, I wanted to say a couple things about it. So because we have so many recessed lights in here, we can't go with just a standard dimmer switch because the wattage rating for the LEDs is not high enough. And so that's another thing that I want to point out to you all, is that when you're shopping for dimmer switches for LED recessed lights or any type of LED lights, you want to make sure that you have enough wattage to cover the number of LED fixtures that you have. And the ratings can vary on one fixture based on the type of lights that are going to be installed with that dimmer switch. And what I mean is the LED rating can be different than the CFL rating, as well as the halogen rating and the incandescent rating. So this particular switch has 1, 2, 3, 4 different ratings written on the front of it. And so the CFL and LED rating on this one is 250 watts, and the halogen and incandescent is 600 watts. Okay, so that gives us more than enough to cover these fixtures that we've got in here today. I just wanted to point that out to you because a lot of times if you go into your big box stores, they're only going to have the dimmer switch for LEDs. It's rated for a lower rating of wattage, which may not work for you if you're going to be installing in a project where you're going to have lots of recessed lights like the one we're on today. So in any case, just wanted to share that with you. I'm going to jump back here now. Okay, so now that we've got the dimmer switch in, we're ready to go ahead and power everything up and try it out first. I'm going to make sure that everything works properly before I put on the cover. The cover plate is the very last piece, and it's got its own screws that fit into it, and it's got its own little deal that has to be done in order to be installed. So I'm going to wait to make sure that everything works and dims properly and we don't have any type of flicker or anything like that before I put our faceplate on and call this one done. So let me go ahead and hit the breaker and let's see what we've got. Okay, so if you haven't tuned in already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because on this video, I showed you how I put the lights into the holes. I showed you how I use my gloves. I showed you how I use my dimmer switch here to make all this work together, and I've shown you that it works. But we still have more videos to go. We're still gonna be talking about color temperature, and I've got a few other tricks up my sleeve. So be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. All right, so obviously we don't have this thing completely buttoned up, but you can see what it's going to look like. So make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and stay tuned to the next video where we're going to give this thing a proper reveal once we've got all the furniture and everything back in here the way that it was before, so that we can do a 100% appropriate comparison between the way that it looks now versus the way that it looked before. See you guys on the next one.